That's true.
Every day.
I think I'm, oh.
Can be busier
he's got-
and busier.
Oh my God, you got the logo on it.
All right.
He's had the logo on it since you started. Where you
Every
at?
single meeting with the exception of, I believe,
What's going
2.
on? I'm sorry, I don't look at men's ties.
I guess
Think
not.
acres go on.
We're on,
That's
YouTube.
like kind of crazy.
We're on YouTube for who knows how long.
Acres, acres and acres.
Oh my God.
Everybody all set?
Look.
Good evening. Today is Monday, September 18th, 2023. It's 7 p.m. I'd like to call the regular Board of Selectmen's meeting to order.
Candace Bouchard.
Jonathan Morhart.
Candy Perez.
Josh Kelly.
Todd Archelashi.
Glenn Albanesius. Stephen Sedlak.
Linda Grappa.
Jack Bork.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If it's okay with the rest of the board, we'd like to move new business up in front of old business, as we have members of the public here. It's fine with me. All in favor? Okay, so,
I guess that's a second. Fine with me.
can I have approval of our regular minutes from the meeting on September 5th?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Jonathan. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Item 5, citizens' comments. The Board of Selectmen welcomes public comment. You'll be limited to 3 minutes or less, and you may speak only once. Would anyone like to speak? Seeing none, moving on to item 6, Town Manager's Report.
All right, good evening, everybody. Since this group last met, I did have a sit-down meeting with Bob Geiger to discuss items related to a transition between my tenure and Bob coming back in to help as an interim town manager. And I know that later on in this meeting, we'll discuss next steps with the search process. The Citizens Academy kicked off last week on Wednesday, and I think it was a tremendous success. We have 15 individuals who ultimately have signed up, but we actually had a couple walk-ins last week, which was exciting to see, and we also had some special guests with us, which was an exciting reveal down in our town clerk's office. For those of you who haven't had the chance to see, I encourage you to stop in, see Glenn, and see the commemoration that he's begun on the wall to our longstanding public servants here in Winchester. There will be some discussion later tonight on cultural district items related to economic development. The town, we're in the midst of advertising a job fair that's being held on October 11th up at the Gilbert School. The Mountainside Drive Development RFP has been reposted, and responses are due back to the town by September 22nd, so it's coming up very quickly. At 9 o'clock a.m., if you're somebody who is interested in submitting a response to that request for proposals, please make sure that it's in promptly. Beyond that, we are still scheduling and planning to hold a first-time homebuyer seminar also on Wednesday, October 11th. That will be a little later in the day, just before the Citizens Academy, just after the job fair that's being held. I am currently in the process of trying to recruit individuals to serve on the town's historic district. We had our first 2 members who were sworn in just late last week, and there's room for another 5 individuals on that body. Related to human resources and hiring, the town is seeking police officers, a utility man 3, utility man 4, and a maintainer 3. If anybody knows individuals who would be suitable for those positions and excited to work for the town and with the town, please have them apply and encourage them to do that. On Wednesday, October 4th at 10 a.m., my office is going to hold a training for business owners and public officials on how to have special events and activities listed on the state tourism website, as well as the regional Discover Litchfield Hills website and the town's website. The location will be here in the Hicks room unless, well, actually no, the location will be here in the Hicks room. I just made that decision. And related to union negotiations, finally set a date of October 16th for our first exchange with the police union. Earlier dates were considered, but none were suitable to the union representatives. You have plenty of upcoming events. I'm not going to steal your thunder, Candace. I know that you'll have the chance to talk about it later, but we've got an exciting event coming up on Saturday the 30th. Please note, while the regular Board of Selectmen meeting is on Monday, October 2nd, the following Monday, town offices will be closed. So if you're looking to work with us or come into town hall for any reason, you'll have to do so either the previous Friday or the following Tuesday. And that's in recognition of Columbus Indigenous Peoples' Day. Any questions that I can answer for Board of Selectmen?
Jack?
Yeah, Josh, just on your list of upcoming events in the calendar, since you mentioned the September 30th fall foliage, and I did notice that the Winchester Wire did not include this, so I'd like to make it
Okay.
as public as possible. The Soldiers Monument Commission puts on its annual cemetery walk on Saturday, October 14th at the Forest View Cemetery, starting the first tour starts around 12:30, Q1, I believe, with a rain date of Sunday the 15th. Since it wasn't mentioned in the Winchester Wire, I wanted to make sure we get as much exposure on that as possible. And you've listed a number of events coming up, so I wanted to make sure that that's public now
Oh, that's
rather than
great.
at the end of the meeting.
That's great. Thank you.
So when's the Winchester Wire gonna be emailed out?
It's already been.
No, it's already been mailed out. The email, I was actually going through the list today. Will go out first thing tomorrow morning, if I don't just do it tonight.
Other questions? Seeing no other questions, Finance Director's report.
Very good. Is the light on at the tail end?
Lights on.
Oh,
Doesn't sound like it.
Switch on?
Electrician here in 2 weeks.
I'm loud, I can do it without it.
Are we recording anything tonight?
We are on YouTube currently, and we haven't shut off yet, so that's a good sign.
So if we can't hear you on the mic, they can't hear you on YouTube.
Oh,
There you go.
we
Now
got
it's
it now. Good evening. These are the results for August 31st, 2023 for fiscal '24. We are 2 months into the year. We're 17% into the fiscal year. Thank you to our residents for paying their tax bills on time. As a reminder, they did not go out until August 1st. Current year revenues, current property taxes, $14,079,065, which is 52.97% of the current year budget. That's in comparison to the prior year of $14,277,803, which is 55.98% of the budget. Past due taxes of $83,500, which is 27.83% of the budget compared.
sorry to interrupt you. It
An
appears,
old-
for whatever reason, that the,
No, wait, this one might be,
This is year-end 2023 we have on
Got
top.
it.
You also have the other one too. You should have the
there we go.
current
So we
year.
have year end and we have,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody's looking at the
Yes.
same thing and
Yes.
understanding. We
We're
got it.
not, we're not.
Yeah.
Well, we are now.
You have the year end, I figured we didn't want to go through with that in detail, that's just for the board
You got it. Thank you.
review, yep. So past due taxes, $83,500, 27.83% of the budget, compared to $78,354, which is 26.12% in the prior year. Our total revenues year-to-date of $14,872,153, which is exactly 38% of the budget. That's in comparison to $14,716,598, which was 40.82% of last year's budget. Current year-to-date expenditures are $6,043,722, 22.25% of the budget, and that's in comparison to $5,418,964, which is 17.64% of the budget. In August, we received our municipal transition motor vehicle tax cap grant from the state of Connecticut for $121,765. You'll also see in your report under the sale of town-owned or foreclosed property, you will see the proceeds for 17 Front Street of $90,893. Cash flow at July 31st, which is our most recent that we have completed. Our treasurer has been out with COVID, is $12,205,635. Oh, sorry, $14,784,817. Of that, $12,205,635 is invested. $993,748 in the Northwest Community Bank sweep account, $2,322,713 in STIF, and $8,889,174 in the Northwest Community Bank money market account. You will also note that already year-to-date, we have already exceeded our budgeted investment income for the year. Our July capital expenditures, $200,127 paid for Case Avenue Bridge work, $41,337 for annual road maintenance, and we paid an additional $38,000 to the Board of Education for the Gilbert School roof replacement. Questions?
Seeing no questions, thank you.
Are you staying for that financing of the,
Yes, yes, that's why I was asking to see, but I don't think Jim's here yet, so we'll wait.
do items
We'll wait on
A,
him.
C, and D first. Correspondence, does anyone have anything? Seeing no correspondence, boards and commissions, Steve?
Thank you, Todd. We have, for first-time consideration, Andre Champagne, I guess he is J. Campaign. He's interested in serving on the Ad hoc Water Level Committee. You see his letter in the package. And his term would end in March of 2025. So we'll start the vetting process on Mr. Champagne. We're ready for a second round, putting forward the name Ryan Horvey as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. He would serve as an alternate, and the term would end in December of 2027. So we'll put his name forward in nomination and take action at our next meeting. And that's it for appointments. However, we would like to remind the public that there are openings on our various boards and commissions. For example, the Architectural Review Committee is looking for 1 or 2 alternates. Board of Assessment Appeals, Conservation Commission, each looking for a member. Economic Development Commission is a very active commission, looking for 3 alternates. Historic Commission, up to 5 members. Laurel City Commission, 4 members. Inland Wetlands, 2 members. Recreation Board, 1 member. And Zoning Board of Appeals, 1 alternate. So those positions are open right now, and we look forward to volunteers coming forward and joining our boards and commissions. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Steve. Moving on to new business. Item A, consider and possibly act on granting.
I thought we were gonna switch those.
Yeah. We're at new business. Item A, 23-61, consider and possibly act on granting a driveway variance at 674 East Wakefield Boulevard. Josh?
So, to be honest, I don't have all that much information about this, but I believe we have somebody here in the audience who has quite a bit. So I would like to invite you up. If you would please state your name for the record. We already have your address, but if you wouldn't mind stating it again, just for formality's sake. And then tell us a little bit about where you are with the project, why a variance needs to be granted. And I was just texted that within 5 minutes, our Director of Public Works will be here to speak in support of the variance as well.
all right, there's a letter in our packet.
There is,
supporting it
there
from
is.
Jim.
Yep.
Jim does support it.
Good evening, my name is Peggy Neal. I live and reside at 674 East Wakefield Boulevard. And in April of 2022, I applied for a driveway permit for permeable pavers. And with normal delays of masons not being available and all that, I was able to get my mason to come in May and put the pavers into the section of my driveway that is 7 or 8% slope. Because according to my permit, Jim Rollins wrote down that I exceed the 14%. So I have a section at my driveway, and I can pass this around if you wish. This is the section I've completed, which is within guidelines. This is the section with the rocks that is not completed with pavers yet, which I am asking for the variance tonight. And this is the damage that horrible July 16th rainstorm created. But at the top of my driveway, next to the road, I am 16.8% slope. I'm 15.7 for my 20 feet of driveway that attaches to the road. About 4 feet in, I'm 14.7%, 14.2. Another 3 feet, I'm in the 13% where my rocks are. So I would like to put pavers and rectify any future problems. It's about 600 square feet.
And per the, mention that was just made, Jim Rollins has supplied the Board of Selectmen with a letter detailing his support for this proposal.
I've worked closely with him.
Yep.
I move that the Board of Selectmen grant a driveway variance to Peggy Neal of 674 East Wakefield Boulevard.
Second.
Discussion? For discussion, we'll add the memorandum from Jim Rollins to the record. Any other discussion? All in favor? Congratulations.
Thank you very kindly for your time. Thank you.
Item C, 23-62, consider and possibly act on approving a resolution in support of the creation of a cultural district. Josh?
So I've shared a little information with the Board of Selectmen over the last few meetings, nothing in such great detail as I'll go into now, about cultural districts in general. Back in 2019, the state of Connecticut really moved forward with an initiative to allow municipal governments or municipalities and towns to establish their own cultural districts in an effort to try and highlight, feature, advertise, market their cultural assets that they have in town. I don't necessarily, if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a couple individuals in the audience who I'd like to invite up to speak.
Absolutely.
We have both Amy and Ala, if you wouldn't mind coming to the front, sharing the microphone. And nothing too lengthy, but Amy and Ala, you've both been working, if you wouldn't mind stating your full names and your addresses for the record, that would be great, or your affiliations to organizations in the town, and tell us a little bit about what you see a cultural district being, why you're interested in it, and then I can help speak through what the ask is of the Board of Selectmen tonight.
My name's Amy Wynn, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Mural Project on Whiting Street in Winsted.
Alla Kravchenko, 21 Fairview Avenue, a resident.
So, as Josh said, the cultural district has a lot of marketing benefits, primarily to the town. It's not something that costs the town anything, but there are several benefits besides marketing to both visitors and all sorts of folks. You retain and attract businesses. You strengthen a distinctive character of Winsted. You also contribute to your plans for economic growth and overall improve the quality of life of residents. And just to expand on that a little bit, Winsted, we are very happy and excited to join in several people who agree with us that Winsted already has many of the necessary attributes required for the establishment of a cultural district. It's a very exciting place, and it's getting even more exciting. And Winsted's Main Street is likely, in our opinion, many people's opinion, I think, is likely the envy of many municipalities with its river, the historic buildings, the businesses and attractions. We would be the longest cultural district in Connecticut.
The designation could also support the efforts, as I said, to retain and attract businesses, which include artists, entrepreneurs, and a wide array of other creative and commercial businesses fueling revitalization that's already underway in Winsted and increasing potentially the tax base in Winsted as well. And as I mentioned, it's distinguishing the character of Winsted different from other municipalities in the state of Connecticut. And, you know, I'm very excited because it will bring it more and more attention to Winsted from those people in Hartford who think all we have are cows and forests in Northwest Connecticut, when there's so much more. So I think Winsted and the west of Northwest Connecticut would be harder for Hartford to overlook. Let's see. Also, forming a cultural district is in alignment with Sustainable CT, which is a state program in which Winsted is a proud participant and making great strides in. And I think Ala can speak to some of the other societal benefits, so I'm going to pass that over to you.
I will read if you don't mind, it's short. Our town has a lot of history, and people have so many memories of the old times, and that is uniting them and represents their identity. By cultural district creation and designation process, we can build many new experiences that will be representing the present and the future, not only the past, and create a new identity and new reputation for Winsted. We're used to thinking of gains as material only. I would like to emphasize the social significance of the proposal. And now that so many positive changes occur and continue to take place in our town's economic development, we need to start paying attention to our community character and identity. Like Josh said, we need to do a better job communicating to the public. We would like Winsted residents to be aware of the value of cultural district creation and designation and be well informed about it so that they can make suggestions on Winsted cultural revival and be part of the implementation. The ordinary residents have to participate in beautifying and animating this town so that they become more attracted to social gatherings on a regular basis, and that in turn will unite them to create a stronger community. With more arts and culture, the residents as a team might be able to address the problems inside our community that all of us very well aware of and that you, the municipality, are already working on. Over the past couple of months, I have spoken to many ordinary residents here in Winsted and listened to their grievances. And I believe that residents, through various public projects and initiatives, can help to address and solve social problems and community concerns. Isolation, lack of participation in community life, poverty, drugs problem, and such. They just have to be inspired and organized for that. So the designation itself is important, but the path towards it, which might take some time, has even more value. And if you pass resolution today, we will be happy to present Cultural District on Falls Foliage Festival next week.
So what's needed to move forward, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the cultural district is established, the cultural districts across the state are established by Public Act 19-143. It was effective October 1st, 2019. There are only a handful of municipalities that have cultural districts, been approved by the state to have a cultural district at this point. And there's a bit of an application process. So what's needed is twofold from the town. The first is a resolution from the Board of Selectmen stating that you support the creation, just the notion of a cultural district coming into Winsted. And that has been attached as one agenda item, which is under new business item C for your consideration. And it's non-binding. There's nothing about any of this proposal that requires an amount of money being allocated, that requires your time beyond considering it at this meeting, or really anything else. It's something that I think will build on our current momentum, just as we had Amy and Ala saying here today. Item number 2 that is needed from the Board of Selectmen is help considering what this Cultural District Commission, a commission that would oversee the Cultural District, would look like. In some communities, something like what I have outlined here for you, which is a draft ordinance creating a Cultural District Commission, is what's been enacted. I actually took New London's ordinance and tailored it to our own because I thought it best suited our needs. But there are other communities that have different ways of going about creating a cultural district committee or commission. This is my proposal. This is something that we have had a dialogue about that between the town and some of the interested parties out in the community, especially those that are helping lead some of our cultural landmarks here in town. And this is the recommendation that I have for the Board of Selectmen. But really, you have a short-term ask of consider and possibly act on this resolution that's here in front of you. And then as a secondary item, something that you'll discuss over several meetings, consideration on the creation of a commission that would oversee the cultural district and its activities. Again, no money being required for the operation of any of this, aside from, I suppose, volunteer help.
Katie?
How many, you said there's a number of cultural districts. I know Torrington was named a cultural district not too long ago. So how many, and Amy, you probably know this, right?
We asked Steph about this. Yeah, there are 5 so far in Connecticut, and I just think it would really, I think this town would especially benefit from it. There may be some towns who certainly could qualify, but they don't need it. But I think we could use it.
And the 5 are Ridgefield, which is, from my perspective, a little surprising. Ridgefield, Torrington, New London, Wethersfield, and Bristol each have established and had accepted cultural districts.
Bristol?
Bristol.
And do cultural districts then make certain museums, buildings eligible for grants more than they are so now, or no?
No, there's not currently any funding behind this effort yet, but there is a movement on the part of the DECD, which includes tourism and arts and culture and heritage, to get behind this with some funding potentially in the future possibly. And it would not be funding for those institutions, but it would be funding for commissions, projects, or efforts that join this whole entity. So everyone would benefit, not just an institution here or there.
It would also depend on creativity of the commission, since the cultural, or rather Office of the Arts would not be giving specifically the grants for the cultural district. It would be giving the grants because of the projects. So it would all depend on variety of the projects.
Just like murals and...
Yep, it could be murals, or it might be an event, or gardens, right?
Right.
Or public spaces. There's so many ideas.
Is there a supporting, like in the state, he just found the list of them on the website. So does DECD or the state tourism or something like that identify cultural districts specifically that helps people find them? Like
I've never
like
seen
a
anything.
website or anything like that?
I
There's
don't
a
think
whole
they,
section of their website that's dedicated to cultural districts.
For the tourism one?
Yep, it's DECD, Department of Economic and Community Development, state website.
But how about like CT Visit and all those?
I'm not sure about CT Visit yet.
I've not seen it.
Like
I
the
know-
ordinary person would use CT Visit or something, not the DECD website, to find them, right? So CT Visit, is there support at the state level now for this?
I recently read that the Office of Tourism was asked to do a better job on advertising specifically cultural districts for each. But each cultural district has their own website, which is not, you're right, it's not easy to find, but it's going to be a creation of the website that is also one of the parts of cultural district.
And
I
what-
think also, as much as you want state support for getting behind it and everything, it's actually a vehicle for the town to really market itself. And as much, if we as a group do a good job in really showing what an incredible, rich experience you can have from one end to the other end and throughout this incredible town, that will, the whole concept of it attracting people will on its own, wow, there's this whole cultural district, it's full of things to engage with, and it keeps new things to keep popping up. It will build a name for itself in a way, a reputation for itself.
So Josh, what staff time is needed for this?
From my perspective, nothing. This is really going to be and that's exactly why Ala and Amy are here tonight. It's really going to be driven by the community in an effort to make sure that the voices of the people behind these different cultural institutions are heard and are shining through the endeavor, the effort. Just a quick search, though, did reveal, to speak to your last question, that the CT Visit website has a specialized page for each cultural district in and of itself. The extent to which that's being advertised beyond the website is, still to come, but it's a good sign.
Yeah, but the feeling is that a cultural district group would not act independent of a municipality, of course, and that there are staff people here that we would be reaching out to make sure that we're in alignment and not duplicating efforts and things like that. I mean, you have an EDC, you have an economic development person, you have a planner.
Right.
It's got to always, Friends of Main Street, we have to coordinate to be effective.
Yeah. But really on more of an ad hoc basis, what are you working on? How can we, have that conversation? EDC and Friends of Main Street has similar questions and conundrums that pop up, but it's really just always about the constant communication.
Lynn, did you have a question?
I think it's been answered
Okay.
several times, thanks.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Jack?
In the establishment of a commission, and I know you said that doesn't have to be done tonight, and it could be a discussion later on, I followed the boundaries and I tried to identify. It appeared that, unless something was missed, the Second Congregational Church and the George Dudley Park were just outside this cultural district. We may want to take a look at that boundary again as it looks, and under item B, the town shall prepare a map. Candy just asked if there's any obligation, staff involved in this cultural district. Well, certainly in preparing a map and then showing which businesses inventory the cultural aspects located in said districts. So there is some involvement in town staff in this. It's not completely volunteers, unless the volunteers are also going to not only create the map, but also do all of the inventory of what's included in the district. I see that also under section C, that the 9 members of this commission, there is not an indication here that some have to be from the town only, and it's quite a good mix of people who could come from different organizations. Just questions being raised here by myself to make sure that these are part of the original discussion that we have. Under powers, there is a question that I've raised as I read this. Under D, under the powers, the commission shall consult and collaborate with the town manager, but it doesn't say anything under D that the Board of Selectmen become involved. Only under E does the commission provide a report no less than quarterly to the Board of Selectmen. So actually the Board of Selectmen are really not involved much at all in anything having to do with the Cultural District Commission carrying out its action. I just want to bring those points to mind as we look at this going forward. I have absolutely no difficulty with the establishment of a cultural district. It's just the details of how this commission is established and what are the boundaries of that cultural district and what are the responsibilities of the commission as it relates to how it uses town staff. Just like all those things to be noted.
I'll jump in, and at least on the question of town staff, I guess I should have said it will take no additional town money with staff working towards the creation of a map and things of that nature, because I'm happy to continue to work on that. I actually already drew out a version of the map when I was putting this document together, and I'm sure that it would suffice for the purposes of a state submission. But as it currently stands, I believe that, as was said, this is a very long cultural district. I'm sure that there is still open conversation, though, as to what should lie within the district. There's nothing within this draft ordinance, as we do with most ordinances, that couldn't be edited over the next 3 meetings to allow for a greater inclusion.
I guess I'm concerned also, as Jack brought up, about the members. We've worked hard with boards and commissions over the last couple of years to make sure that they are electors, and I think this should remain.
Yep. There's nothing to say that you can't simply tack on. Now, the reason that it's labeled this way, as I said, there are 5 cultural districts. Not all of them have a municipally ordained commission, something that is actually coming from the municipality itself. Some of them have just a volunteer board that has a lot less, where the town has a lot less control, say, interaction, collaboration. So it was my thought, why don't we mirror, if we're going to move forward with this, why don't we mirror it off the one town that actually has a level of collaboration and connection to their cultural district commission. So there is New London. There's nothing to say that we can't add a clause at the end of section C that says anybody appointed to this must be an elector, while still keeping everything else true. But it is limiting. At the end of the day, while we have been trying to make things uniform, when we're trying to have more conversations and be more inclusive of the people who are investing in our community, we have to recognize we are not a community of just residents. And that's a good thing. We have more people who are coming from outside of our community who are interested in being part of it and being inside the community. So I say that not to dissuade you from adding that line to section C, but simply to help the board reflect on, is it right?
Could you consider having non-voting members as advisors on such a commission or committee too?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with non-residents on this at all, especially as it relates to their business people in town, or they're somewhat related to organizations that are included within the cultural district. I just wanted to point that out, that this does not formalize the fact that we need only taxpayers, residents in town. It's open, and I kind of like that for this particular cultural district. What I was raising was, are we aware of that? And just making sure that point is done. And I wanted to make sure that if we understand all of that, that the powers of this commission, as we eventually establish the commission, do end up reporting back to the Board of Selectmen and not just the town manager.
Jack, you mentioned the church. Hinsdale to Main Street includes
Well,
the
the
church.
church is actually
It's on
Spencer.
800 Main Street.
Well, when I did the mapping and I came down Hinsdale, it kind of skirted that, and it skirted the George Dudley Park. So the Second Congregational Church and the George Dudley Park were just outside the boundaries as it relates to item A and the definition there. So I just wanted to be sure that as we read this,
Yeah, I know, it says, to me, it says Hinsdale to its intersection with Main Street, which is
well,
800 Main Street, which is the church.
And it says that it includes all businesses located on that section of street. I think the thing that's questionable is the park.
Yeah, the park, I agree.
But you can bump that out to
yeah.
include the
Yeah,
park.
I think it's just a matter of bringing it around to Division Street and rather than going down Monroe,
Yeah.
but if you brought it around to Division,
But the park, again, is on Main Street.
it depends upon how you turn that corner.
Well,
Yeah, we
yeah.
could
No,
itemize that
but
out.
the point is that it has to be walkable. So these are sidewalks to
Right.
sidewalk. So it doesn't have to go to the river. It goes to the sidewalk. So they have to be, the cultural district requires that it be a contiguous, walkable district. So if you go Hinsdale, and then you cross the road to Main Street, and you go on the other side, anything that's along that sidewalk is applicable.
That's fair, and
Okay.
it may be. I just, when the map gets developed, I want to make sure that those are included as
Right.
opposed to being just outside, and somebody says, well, we should do something with that park, or why isn't the Second Congregational Church, which is a historic location with lots of reasons to be
Yeah, it's not gonna
involved?
go, it's not gonna go around the property, it's touching properties,
Okay,
because it's a walking district. Just wanna clarify that.
fair enough, I want to be sure that I'm
Yeah,
seeing it
yeah,
that
no,
way.
and that's why I'm addressing it, that, it is included, even though it's not wrapped around the property, it's on the sidewalk.
I'm on a different subject, I'm sure that you can settle on the map for sure. I think I may be speaking a little out of turn, and it may be premature, but I think one of the challenges that I would recommend you, in your wisdom, consider as far as this, is that you have like incredible energy in this town, I believe, at this point in time, with Friends of Main Street, with the EDC, with the Historic Commission, and I think it would be in your wisdom to attend to the formation of this so that things are coordinated and that it avoids duplication of effort, and that people are really communicating strongly and obligated to do so. Is my only thing, is that you just don't want, all these different limbs doing
Not
different
looking
things.
for silos here, no.
Right. And so in your wisdom of thinking of what is the best structure for this, there are different options. And, I don't know if now is the time to speak about it, but we did have a good, healthy brainstorming meeting. We also met with Candace, because she has a lot of experience with Friends of Main Street. We met with a bunch of potential stakeholders just to kind of get their thoughts on it. And some really interesting thoughts came up with regard to that. And people certainly didn't want to see the right hand not knowing what the left hand was doing, because that will defeat the whole purpose.
It would.
Other questions? Okay, so we are on item C. Do we have a motion on the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve us creating a cultural district in the town of Winchester and applying to the state for such designation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Candace. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Now, the second part of that, consider and possibly act on the adoption of an ordinance creating a cultural district commission, and this would be the first of 3 meetings.
I think just organizationally, what we should do with this is, we have some questions on it. I think we should look at it further and start the ordinance process at the next meeting, so that we could look at all the details, because this is the first time we've heard it. And so I think there's some things that have been pointed out that we need to maybe take a look at and think about a little bit more,
That will give us the
and-
option to add Jack's concerns to item A. So moved.
Well, I think.
Item A, D,
I think there's, like things like who sits on the commission. I don't think it just has to be an elector, but I also don't think it can just be anybody that's not connected to town. Should be somebody that works in, has a business, works for an organization, and somehow has a connection here, not just somebody that comes in, because it's not right about now, right? Because when we do these things, they become legacies. They're not just about today, they're about what happens 3 years down the road, and people change all the time, so when we consider that, we should consider about what it looks like going farther, and just take a little bit more time on this.
Even on the appointments, you should work like the housing. It should first go to the commission for them to vet the person if they really could fit in, and then it comes to the Board of Selectmen. They should recommend.
So they should make a recommendation.
They should make a I think, personally.
Yeah, but there isn't one yet, so.
Pardon?
We're establishing the creation of a cultural district, but we don't have a cultural commission just yet.
Correct, but I'm just saying, when we get that.
Well, who's going to make the recommendation?
One thing we'd like to offer is for your consideration as you, pull and tug at this, is some ideas, some proposals of ways that you can go and people you might consider, or profiles of different members that you might want to consider, and then you can look at the pros and cons yourself and look at how that is. Because we too, in the brainstorming group and even in a small steering committee, have struggled with these kinds of questions ourselves, and what are the pros and cons and what we recommend. So we're happy to share with you our brainstorming for you to consider.
I will also ask you to see it as a different type of commission. It's like no other because of the type of members that have to be included. So it's not typical.
So happy to give you share more of the thoughts with it about it.
I move to table item D to the next meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you for your interest in development.
Item B, consider and possibly act on the purchase of equipment. Jim?
I think Jim has to. It's a financial question.
She's here.
Yeah, it's kind of a tag teaming operation. For the record, Jim Rollins, Director of Public Works. So in our capital improvement requests, we had a tandem axle plow truck that was approved. And our intention going into the capital improvement process was to, keep with the same spec truck that we have been buying, just making it a tandem axle rather than a single rear axle, and doing a lease with a maintenance contract as part of the lease. The idea behind that was just because the mechanics are so overloaded with the old stuff that they're trying to keep going, that if we could take something new off of their plate while they work on the old stuff, it would be advantageous. So during the process of specking out the truck and looking at the lease and going through the schedule of build and the cost, we learned that the price was more than we anticipated, and even more important than that, the build time for the Freightliner is too long. If we were to have ordered this, the day after we got the capital improvement budget passed, we still wouldn't have it for next winter. So we're in desperate need. The older trucks are really failing really fast. So we started looking outside outside of the Freightliner specification, talking with other departments of Public Works to see what they're happy with, what they're not happy with. And one of the reasons, so we started looking at the Mack truck with the same build, the same company putting the actual dump bodies together so that would be consistent with our spec, just on a different chassis. So we looked at Mack because we heard so many good reports about their maintenance or their low maintenance requirements, and their build times are about half that of Freightliner. My understanding is the biggest reason for that is because so much of it is domestically produced rather than European, foreign production. So the price is just a little bit less, but they do not offer the same lease with maintenance that we were hoping to get. I talked with my mechanics, I said, hey, this is what we went in for the reasons that you guys brought up to us. What do you think? And they didn't even hesitate, that they thought getting a truck sooner was by far better than the amount of time they would spend doing maintenance. And that was before they even knew it was a little bit less costly. So our request is to, and this is where I'm gonna lean on Anne Marie, is to, instead of going with the lease with the maintenance package, to go with an outright purchase, and, essentially fill that needed gap with something, 6 months sooner and in time for next winter. And, so that's the nuts and bolts of the logic behind what we're requesting. And, Anne Marie, you can speak of the math on that with the interest and the cost and what resources we have available versus spreading out the lease and so forth, so. I know.
Yes.
Not
We need a
ideal.
new one. So what we gave you on the lease proposal was a summary page that gives you 4 options, and then the detailed pages of the actual amortization schedule for all of the options that are available. And in looking at the leases, option 1 and option 3 that have what's called the track percentage, which is 25%, those are essentially a lease. And at the end of the lease term, so just for an example, if you look at option 1, which is the schedule that you have that has annual payments of the $59,804. At the end of the lease, so you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of the just about $60,000 payments, and then at the end of that is a $78,000 payment. That is the option to purchase at the end of the lease if you so chose. With this leasing company, what would happen is they would take the truck back and, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, if they sell the truck and they get less, then we end up having to pay more than the 78. But if they sell it for more, we would get the difference back. Is that correct? It's a little, yeah, it's a little convoluted. So options 1 and options 3 are a lease for either 60 or 72 months with a give back at the end of the lease term, if we so choose. Or you pay the last payment and you buy the truck outright at the end of that. So option 1, if you look at the bottom of the page of the amortization schedule, our cost for the truck, that is the $313,833, we end up paying $377,479 because we would be paying 7.632%. So on the purchase, we would pay $63,645 in interest and finance charges. That is how all of these are structured. 2 and 4 are basically a flat-out lease purchase with no option at the end. So you pay more upfront, but at the end of that, it's a lease purchase. So in option 2, the percentage rate right now is 6.231% on that one. That would be a 5-year. The finance charges on that are $39,040. We would end up paying $352,874 on that. Option 3, that one goes into 2 pages. That interest rate is 7.465%. We would end up paying $73,411 in interest charges for a total of $387,245. Jim and I, in speaking on this, we've kind of thrown 1 and 3 out the window. And then option 4, which would be a little bit longer of a term, would be a 6.007. We would pay $47,476 in finance charges for a total of $361,310. The thought on this, and obviously this is for you as a board to mull over, was purchasing outright to me makes a little more sense because the interest rates right now are so high. I mean, the 6% is crazy, over 6% and or up 7% is crazy right now on these. We have cash in the bank. I think it would make sense for us to purchase this outright, and then, as has been done in the past, we would budget for that over going forward into the annual budgets for an amount to be determined,
What's in the capital improvement plan?
What's the amount of money that was allocated for the
Yeah,
truck?
what is allocated for the vehicle? Why don't we have a letter that states this proposal compared to what's in the capital improvement plan?
I think no, I don't remember off the top of my head what,
I'll have it in just a moment.
50 or 60, I want to say.
Right, but you're 50 or 60 for the payment, right?
Right, that was all that has been budgeted for in the
Right,
capitals.
but that was the proposal was for how many years? I think that's what Candace wants to know.
Yeah, I want to know what everything is.
It was considered a 6-year lease. On your spreadsheet, you'll only see it go out 5 years because we only projected out 5 years. But the intention in the capital improvement,
I think we have 10 years. Don't we have 10 years on our plan?
No, we do not. Our plan has always been a 5-year plan.
It's
So
five, but I
it
thought
was
we had
6
more.
years at 60?
6 years at 50 or 60.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the total
Well,
was.
That'll matter because what's the price of the truck?
Outright.
313.
833.
It is $60,000.
It's 60, yeah.
60 over 5 years is 300, and
Well,
then
in the
over.
capital, in the capital improvement information sheet, it was supposedly a 6-year lease that we went with. So, in the 6th year, you would add that $60,000 one more time. It only shows on your spreadsheet as 5 years. but
So you would be
the intent from the
360.
beginning- Yes, so the intent from the beginning was.
And was
5.
that to purchase or,
That was the lease with the maintenance package.
to purchase?
Well.
Or just
that would-
lease?
That would assume a lease and own it at the end of the lease.
For any additional money?
Depends on which.
Right, it usually depends on which option you choose. So the leasing companies typically will give you the option at the end to give the truck back.
So when you go and create it's 60 for 6 years, and then when you lease it, they would give you the buyout price. When you go through this process right now.
Right, and they'll give you, that's why they give you multiple options on what you choose to do. Because some people will choose to say at the end of the lease, we want to give it back, we want to,
Right, I
recycle and get a new one.
So it's 360, and this one is, what's the total?
The
price?
outright price is $313, and this is the same as what they are factoring in as the price of the lease, $313, $833, $66, which is the price of the truck with the warranties, correct, Jim? Yes.
And the 360 had a maintenance agreement, how much was that
But we can
valued
only
at?
demonstrate 5 years out on a 5-year plan.
No, but it says it here. So.
They don't itemize that exactly.
But this one has
Part of-
this has no maintenance.
Yeah.
Part, right.
Right.
Part
So
of,
we don't know what the value of
Well,
the maintenance that we
not
want.
exactly. Part of the way they handle the maintenance as their lease
As a warranty?
is a warranty, and that warranty is included in the 313. So that's why it's kind of hard to say X number of dollars.
So wouldn't they do that in the other 360? Wouldn't they include a warranty, same amount of time? It's a new vehicle.
That's how they do it. So
So some of the leases, like, I know on the Freightliner, did we do the lease on the first one? Or no? So I can speak to the leases that I'm familiar with that we did in Plymouth, where it's a 7-year lease, and at the end of the 7 years, you give the truck back. And throughout that 7 years, that includes all the maintenance on the truck. Your truck breaks down, they give you a loaner. That's what I think we were considering last year on one of the plow trucks, correct?
that was our intention, was to go that route.
So you don't pay for any of the maintenance throughout the life of the lease?
But you don't pay for routine maintenance, you do pay for wear items. Brakes are considered a wear item. The big thing that we're worried about is by, and you don't have this, maybe they do have that sheet, but that shows
The warranty sheet?
the warranty, probably not, 'cause
I
that-
brought
All
it.
right, can I just ask a question? So we're not looking at the Freightliner, we're not looking at the maintenance contract, we're not looking at leasing a Freightliner with maintenance.
Correct.
So
Well,
now we're looking at a Mack truck.
we're looking at purchasing a Mack versus leasing a Freightliner with a maintenance contract.
Right, but we're not doing a Freightliner, or you don't want to do a Freightliner with a leasing contract because it's not going to be here for this winter, 2024, or 2025.
Right.
But the Mack will be here for 2025. All right, so we have a whole year to go for that, but we're not doing maintenance.
Correct.
All right, so in your proposal, even though it's listed as $50,000, $60,000 a year for 5 years, in your proposal, in the documents that Josh just showed me, it does show that you were asking, that it was a 6-year lease at $60,000. So at least we're within the range of what we said it was going to be. We're not over budget, in other words. All right, so we're not over budget. With what we were talking about before, we have been buying, and that's one of the benefits of having our large fund balance, right? One of the things that we've said that is an advantage to the community is to use the fund balance to pay for large equipment purchases and then pay ourselves back over each of the next years. So I would be most interested in the outright purchase of the truck to make sure that we have it, because we certainly, looking at your paperwork that you gave us in our packets about where we ended up in 2023, you know, where it looks like we're gonna end up in 2023, we certainly will have the capacity to carry the truck over the next few years, even with everything else that we're carrying. So I think it's financially in the best interest to purchase it outright, and if we're changing from Freightliner to the Mack, and we can't get the maintenance thing, I think that's probably the best way to go. But I think it's the information, the whole picture that those documents didn't give us. That's why we have all these questions.
Understood.
To your question, on the extended warranty options, the list, do you want to read these off, or you want me to
Yeah,
read these
I
off?
can.
Yeah, you read them off. You got them.
So the standard, you know, when you purchase the truck, it comes with a standard 60-month, 5-year, 250,000 mile. For us, it's more about the years than the miles, because we don't rack up the miles like an over-the-road truck does. It comes with a towing warranty, and with brand new trucks, that's actually a pretty good value, because they're insanely expensive to tow, and you almost always have some ridiculous thing that happens, at least in its first few months. And then it comes with an 84-month engine warranty and an 84-month, which would get you through the whole, you know, you own it outright before that expires. And an exhaust aftermarket or after-treatment system. So the engine and the exhaust and the drivetrain, that stuff is covered for between 60 and 84 months, depending on what part of the vehicle it is. So all the big stuff is covered. And the exhaust, that's the one that has us the most nervous, because when those go belly up.
So you can come back to us with a new price for purchase.
So the new price for purchase is attached to your presentation at $313,833.66.
Right, just to buy it outright now.
Buy it, yes.
Got it.
It's just for one truck, right?
Yeah, insane. This is,
That's why they don't need a new building, because they're driving their building.
right, yeah, it's crazy. Just to let you know, the first full-size plow truck that we bought, it was a single rear axle rather than a dual, so maybe $20,000 difference, just for that feature, was $180,000.
It took
So-
2 or 3 years to get.
Yeah, the first one, well, we had to spec that one, so it took a year to build, but it took a year for us to spec what we wanted.
This does not include plow,
This is ready to roll. Plow, spreader, sander,
So it's a
ground
new plow?
controls.
GPS and
Yeah,
everything.
all
of it, soup to
all
nuts.
the pneumatics for the plow.
All of it, yeah.
So the truck comes in,
The chassis itself is 190, no, the chassis itself is 20,000. And then the actual build, brings it up the rest of the way. I don't know if it's itemized on, yeah, I don't have the sheet that has
But
the
Jim,
actual
if
price.
you buy a new truck like this, what do you do with the one you take off the road? You cannibalize the parts?
Yeah.
Because you can't sell that truck at this point, can you?
Oh, it's valueless, yeah. So we still have, depending on which truck comes off, we have 4 that are really horrifically bad. One is a complete mongrel that doesn't match up with any of the others. If we take that one off the road, we'll just auction it off, cannibalize anything that's useful. If we take off one of the other ones, we have 3 internationals and 1 sterling. If the sterling goes, whatever. If the international gets taken off, then we'll keep that one for parts because we have 3 sister trucks. And we'll just keep cannibalizing.
Is this your first Mac?
This will be our first Mac.
Can you buy a maintenance package if we buy it outright? Like I can buy one for my car.
I don't know. I didn't even think to ask that question.
Oh, you would have the warranty.
Well, you have the warranty, but.
No, I have a warranty and then I have other
Yeah.
warranties on different parts of my vehicle.
I can't ask that question. I didn't even occur to me.
What's the estimated life of this truck?
About 30 years in Winston.
So,
As long as it'll go, yeah.
so that's
why I said estimated.
I'm giving you an estimate.
that's a great question.
It's dependent upon the voters of the town.
Bingo. Essentially that's what it boils down to. Part of the thing to keep in mind, I think, especially with the, if you did do the lease with the balloon payment at the end, no one wants to see, a crazy ass recession like typically happens. And, government's doing everything it can to provide that quote soft landing. But if they don't and values go down, you can buy a new truck less later. But if you had to buy the lease out, they'd give you nothing for it. So there's issues there. There's a lot going on with that question. That's a really complex question. The way that my guys are treating these trucks now compared to the way they did before, the amount of maintenance they're getting, the inspections that they do, the specifications that we've created, lead to a much longer life, a much longer good service life. Our question now is less about rust and damage and wear. It's more about corrosion of electrical systems and exhaust systems from the chemicals. Not so much the chemical we put down, it's more we have to drive state roads to get to our roads. And that magnesium chloride they put in is vicious. And that's our biggest concern. Mechanically, well, the other thing too, the trucking industry has learned to monetize their product. They last half as long and they charge twice as much. It's a pretty good business plan. So we're kind of in that boat. They also stop making parts a lot sooner than they used to, so they become obsolete. Yeah, it's not a good world for the consumer. I think it'll be a little better with Mac. They're a little more steady Eddie, but I can't guarantee that. So, yeah, you ask a tough question, Candace. I don't have an easy answer for you.
So
Oh, I'm sorry, that was
for our
Todd's
next meeting, could you give us an updated equipment list of what you have? Because we used to have that, like how many trucks you had, what their ages were. It's actually in a file somewhere. I'm assuming you have it updated, so that we know how many and what ages our trucks are.
Yeah, actually, I just updated it like a week ago.
Yeah. So what do we need?
So right now, if you're looking for more information before you make a decision, then I suppose it would be a table. I don't know if that works from your timeline's perspective.
Yeah, sooner the better, because build slots are going quick. and
Yep.
That's,
Well,
yeah.
we can vote on the 314,000, and then if he gets a warranty, we can always do a supplemental. If there's a warranty
So
that
if there's a
covers
maintenance-
maintenance, you can always modify it, but this is the vehicle. The warranty's separate.
Well, the budget is 60,000 a year.
Right, it's 360 versus,
Right.
it's $46,000 savings. Even though that one had maintenance, we don't know what the value of that
Yeah.
was.
Again, I would think the motion would be something to the effect of, you know, allow a purchase rather than the lease, and allocate, and allow the immediate purchase to be, you know, with cash to be paid back over 6 years or something to that degree, to keep it, just to keep the details out.
The capital could be, the capital going forward, you know, at your discretion could be updated so that, you know, if you didn't wanna do the 60,000 a year, you could modify the 60,000 if you wanted to do it faster, or, you know, for my purposes, I would, you know, I would take in.
We can't modify it now.
No,
We
I'm
have to
just
wait
saying,
until-
right, I'm saying for in next year's budget.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's why you keep the motion.
just to purchase the truck.
Exactly.
Right.
Bland. How about that?
Again,
Approval to purchase the truck, and using our internal fund balance to finance it.
Well, you could go back to him and say, hey, what if we buy it? Is it gonna get lower? You know, I don't know,
we can try.
but not to go more than
They- they
314,000.
They usually, like any dealer, they usually like they're half in the business of finance as they are, so they'd much rather finance it, so not only they lower the price cash sale when they think they could finance it and make money off that, so.
Where's the nearest Mack dealer?
Hartford.
Not Torrington?
Gabrielle?
Okay, let's do the motion.
And that's where
Discussion
Freightliner is
where
too.
Mac is.
Freightliner, Hartford.
I move that we authorize a purchase of a Mack for up to $314,000 in place of the lease for the Freightliner.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Moving on to unfinished business, 23-60A. Consider and possibly act on the adoption of amendments to the driveway ordinance, second meeting.
I really don't have anything new to share at tonight's meeting. I have been in touch with George Clausen, our chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. He and I are going to continue to have our discussions until we're a little bit closer to the arrival point where the Board of Selectmen needs to make its final decisions as to remove an ordinance, and they need to take action to adopt a new regulation. What's in your packet tonight does reflect the most up-to-date reviewed by Kevin Nelligan version of the driveway regulation that's being considered for adoption. The proposal on the table still, for anybody who's out there watching who didn't catch it last time, is to remove the ordinance in favor of adopting driveway regulations that would be overseen by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If anybody has questions on specific parts of the regulation, really, that's comment that should go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The question before the Board of Selectmen, they'll decide between this meeting and at least one subsequent meeting, or more if you so choose, is whether or not you agree that the purview of the driveway, what previously known as the driveway ordinance, should in fact be under the Planning and Zoning Commission. If so, the recommendation on the table is to do away with the ordinance and allow them to adopt a regulation. We'll continue to coordinate, and I'll make sure that everybody on this board is aware before the next meeting if we're ready to move forward or not, based on where the Planning and Zoning Commission is with their adoption process. If you don't believe that this is a good idea, then no action need be taken.
Josh, do you know what the date is of the next planning and zoning meeting? where
Next
they're gonna-
Monday,
Next Monday, okay.
yes. And I'm planning to be there.
Okay.
So you make this our second meeting, right, for the removal of the driveway ordinance?
Yep, it was considered at the last meeting. This
All right,
would be
but-
number 2.
So where do I find it on the website?
You don't.
Because we wanted to make sure, we talked about it a
Legal
lot in
notice.
terms of where things were going to be posted.
Okay.
And we had talked about the first meeting versus second meeting, third meeting, so I'm here and I've looked under legal notices, I've looked under charter ordinance and regulation. Am I missing it?
I'm sorry, I thought we had discussed at the last meeting, and I may be wrong, but my understanding was that the appearance on the agenda constituted as meeting 1 and appearance on the agenda constituted as meeting 2. A legal notice is posted before meeting 3 to ensure that there are a full 15 days before it's enacted, which we had run it by the town attorney, and that's what was,
Right, but we also
Recommended and
talked about the
required.
fact that we just posted just to make sure that it's on there.
Okay.
Because section 303 was updated a while ago, right?
Yep.
That's the section, Candace? 303.
Yeah.
First
I mean,
time we've so it's time that's why we did that charter change, so we could make changes to our ordinances.
And just because it'll be on the website doesn't cost us any money to post it.
Yep.
I mean, I think we all are in agreement that the driveway ordinance should move over to planning and zoning. Is there anybody that disagrees on that?
Not a one.
Not me.
Crickets,
How
okay.
many driveways are in the pipeline?
That's those that have applied.
Bingo. There's so many that are the beauty of I can't answer that because I don't even know how many go in that I don't know about. But the beauty of the changes that we've made to this is it streamlines redoing driveways that are existing and holds new driveways to a higher standard that meets modern safety regulations. So it's just way more user-friendly and gives you the ability to enforce the rules so that we can make those incremental changes that cause us legacy problems for years and years. So, and I know it didn't answer your question, but it's just hard to know. There's just a lot of driveways that go in we don't know about. But now
Especially
that,
all the rain damage.
and it'll be a lot easier to track that because the land use people will be the ones that notice this stuff. And they're the ones that are, the enforcement agency rather than the ordinance that had no teeth. It's all in the right place. So the people that would notice them have the ability to say, hey, you didn't get a permit for this, let's go through the process, let's make these changes. Do I think this is a perfect set of regulations? No, but do I think it's 10 times better than what we have? Yes, and the plan is to live with it for a little while, and then as a regulation, you can tweak it without turning it into a federal, offense, and it's, this is a far better way to go.
Will this address all the driveways washing out after every rain?
It gives us a start at that. To say it completely addresses it, no. And the reason for that is mostly because the worst offenders, well, some of the worst offenders are paper roads that we don't know the owners of. So it's kind of hard to go after somebody who you don't.
Yeah, but there's also
Take it all.
driveways that we do know the owners of that you're sweeping up after every time it
Those-
rains. And we're trying to keep it out of the waterways and,
This definitely works towards giving us more teeth in that arena. Will they find ways around what we wrote in there? I don't know, but we certainly tried to tailor it to be able to manage those for the first time.
so we have to wait for planning and zoning, right, to make a regulation? So
Yes.
we can post that we want to remove the ordinance and then come for the next time, because it takes us to get, 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings, and the 4th meeting, 15 days later it goes,
Correct.
right?
You only need 3, but yeah, if you want the 4th.
Well,
Minimum
I
of
think we
3.
should I think we should post on our notices under one of those sections that we're removing the driveway ordinance so that it can go over to planning and zoning, just to be clear about it, and then they say they're gonna make the regulation, then we go forward and say we're moving it
It should
again.
be like having 824 of ordinances to go to planning and
Well,
zoning.
it was referred, at your last meeting, you asked that I refer
that's
it,
right,
and I
that's
did.
right. Yeah,
and
that's right.
George has it, so.
Right.
That's right.
They've been working on it for a long time, so they're not surprised. They're just happy to hear that it's moving on this end too, because they can't adopt their regulations if it's gonna be at odds with the ordinances.
Okay, so post it, and we'll take it at the next meeting.
All right?
Item B, 23-58, consider and possibly act on the implementation of new parking rules on Main Street. Josh?
So at the last meeting, the Board of Selectmen heard from both the chief and I about this matter. The proposal on the table, as we put it, doesn't mean it has to be what moves forward, but the proposal on the table is to remove any sign on Main Street that read 1 hour parking or 2 hour parking, and replace it with a sign that says no parking from 2 AM to 5 AM. There are many reasons for this. I can go into them in more detail if anybody would like to hear them again. But the main takeaway that I had from the last meeting was the Board of Selectmen asking me to solicit public comment and feedback from those who own properties along Main Street and those who own businesses along Main Street. So a master list was compiled by our assessor's office of anybody who owns property and anybody who owns a business at, the addresses on Main Street. And a letter was sent to each of those to ensure that we reached everybody directly at their door. And we heard back at the time that I put this together, this was on Friday, and a number of comments were shared with you. Some were very clearly in favor of a change in parking rules. One or two came in with mixed views, and then a couple came in that were strictly opposed to a change in parking rules. I think that the best way to characterize the comments that came in, this is a broad stroke, so please take it with a grain of salt. It seems that people are interested in trying to find more parking spaces and are interested in new ideas to pursue that. They're also concerned about the amount of time that an individual is able to spend parked in front of a storefront during the day. As much as I came before you at the last meeting to say, I'm concerned that there are some individuals who are only able to park for 2 hours when they're going to see a 2.5-hour movie at the Gilson, that concern of mine did not seem to be reflected in the comments that were received. Now, that being said, there are only 6 or 7 comments that were received in time for me to create this report. I received another 2 today, both of which had very similar feelings behind them, and I'm happy to pass them along to whatever extent I can. But I think the Board of Selectmen has a difficult decision to make if it wants to make a decision as to, how should we proceed? Obviously, we have a situation right now where there's too little parking, and we know what those regulations are. Any change that you make is going to probably make some people happy, probably going to make some people, at the very least, skeptical, if not perhaps even sour on the idea. But overall, I think that taking some level of action to make an improvement is worthwhile. The question is, what is that action that should be taken?
I have a couple of questions about what was sent to the people to respond to. Did it include that there is, that the municipality has parking behind Main Street?
It did.
Okay. I asked Josh for some data, because I looked at the responses, and one of the things that stood out is that people liked having the 2-hour parking signs there because it told people that they couldn't stay there forever, right? And they wanted some sort of time thing to have a turnover so different people could get in front of their businesses, which is very legitimate, right, in terms of their quest for that. But then when we look at our parking enforcement, there's only been one in the past year that was for overtime, parking somewhere for overtime. So we haven't been enforcing the parking limit. So is it the people that park there see the sign and say, oh, I can't stay here that long? Or do most people ignore those signs now? I'm not sure which one it is, but there's only been one enforcement of parking time. And I also asked if there was any call-ins, if anybody had called in from a business to ask if they had, somebody was parked there too long in front of them so that they would be ticketed over the 2 hours. And there hasn't been any of that. So there's legitimate concern that you want to have spaces open up for yourself. There's a concern, obviously, that you want to give people enough time to patronize your area. Somebody wrote that they're concerned that their tenants won't have any place to park, which takes up the space for a long period of time. And the biggest thing is, in terms of creating more parking, we know that creating more parking would either take more land, which we're not gonna find, or a reorganization of Main Street, and how many parking will that do? And that will take 8 to 10 years based on how long it took us to get the first medians from inception to completion back in 2000, whatever it was, 3, 2, something like that. Where it took a long time and a lot of money to do it. So if we just stay the way it is, we just stay the way it is. And we've had people come to us at board meetings and go, you need to make more parking. So how do we so it's one of those things that is solvable but not solvable. So which direction do we go in based on the data that we have? Do we start enforcing on Main Street? Because if we enforce on Main Street, it goes against one of the concerns that somebody who we got a comment from about where they have to park because of crossing the street. So if we enforce it, then the people that don't like to have to cross the street because of traffic, so the enforcement will hurt that business. So it's a kind of a very detailed one. I think that's why we just went to the middle of the night, was it had the least impact. It might have created some openings.
I can imagine there's also a combination approach, right? I think that there is an opportunity, if the Board of Selectmen so chose, to lengthen the amount of time that somebody can stay on Main Street to alleviate those concerns, but perhaps post 2 and 3 hour parking instead of 1 and 2. But also to have some level of overnight restriction on parking. So that way you're making sure that business owners who want the cars to keep turning over are satisfied. You have an understanding with the residents that once you get home, you gotta park either on a municipal lot or something that's been assigned to your building. Nothing's perfect, but that's certainly another angle that could be taken. And nothing has to be decided tonight. As we've discussed, DOT's wheels turn slowly at the end of the day. Both prongs, you have to have both Board of Selectmen buy-in and DOT buy-in in order to move this item forward. They haven't completed their review as to whether they would be willing to put these signs up. And the reason this has been brought to you before that is because they take such a long time. They want to have some input from you as to, is this really the way that you are interested in going? But if further data or information is needed, a table could be made as well.
Has the police department or town manager considered parking meters?
Honestly, I've considered parking meters. I think that there are significant pros and cons. I actually think, and this is my own personal statement, this is not speaking on behalf of you, the town, anybody else. I think that one of the most effective ways to mitigate having individuals on, parking on Main Street would be to have a very low-cost parking meter, something to the effect of 5 cents an hour. So that way, if somebody's going to park there all night, they're paying a more significant amount to the town. But somebody who's coming and parking to catch a movie, it's not really any issue. It's not really anything out of their pocket. It's not substantive. And that way, there are a lot of different new technologies that allow people to pay from their phone. You don't even have to worry about carrying a nickel around with you, and a nickel's not too hard to find either. So either way you go, I think that that's not a bad option. I think once you start getting into, I've been to some destinations where you're spending $5+ just to park on the street and possibly have your car hit.
Over a year ago, Naugatuck instituted a system, and I asked the chief of police to advise if he recommended that, and I didn't get any response. Like, it's basically yes, they have instituted, but it was like I don't want to hear what the feedback was on it a year later, not that. And I don't know if that was more than a year, but I mean, so there have been suggestions, but no one's following up on. And I don't know if the chief of police share that sort of information with each other, or they just share criminal activity about how these systems are working or not working. Because I don't want to put something in that doesn't work.
Right.
But was it a good thing that was instituted in Naugatuck? It's a totally remote, and the town gets money back for each one of the fees.
It's in Torrington too.
Oh, I don't know.
Torrington has meters.
Yeah.
And having gone to Torrington, I mean, I would hate for us to have to do meters.
I get it.
I know that it helps move people along, and it makes the turnover happen, and it does all that.
What's another thing to send to the business owners? What do they think about that? We don't have, any.
I'll be the, kind of second one now to speak out completely against meters. As someone who worked in downtown Hartford from 2014 to 2019, it costs $7 a day to park at a meter in Hartford. That's $35 a week if you're working 5 days a week. It adds up quick. There was a lot of pushback on water and sewer, increasing the rates $40 a quarter. Now you're talking $35 a week.
Well, I'm not suggesting it, I was suggesting asking Naugatuck how it worked or didn't work. You know, what was their experience?
And the other thing about Hartford is their parking is run by an independent, non-municipal company.
So would this be?
Right, which means enforcement is taken out of the town's hands.
Oh, no, I don't know that. I don't know that. I know that the system is, you know, the payment system.
You
is,
give
but I
a
don't know.
private company way too much power if you do it the way that Hartford does their automated parking meters.
Oh, I don't,
Well, rather than removing the signs, I did a lot of writing in a lot of the towns in upstate New York, and I noticed that as I went into a town, the town border always had a sign saying, the town does not allow parking between, sometimes it was 1, sometimes it was 2, to 6 a.m. on any of the town streets. And it says that. As you drive into the town, it says, there's no parking on the town streets, any town street, from a time of day, a time of night. And it seems that's a simple way to say to people, you can't park in the street overnight. And if we're monitoring that and somebody parks on the street, you ticket them. But the issue of parking during the day, I think just leave the signs up for a while, the 2-hour signs. They're not as I mentioned during the last meeting, I still don't think having somebody come in at 5 in the afternoon and parking their car there is as much of an issue as somebody who's coming into town to do some business and can't find a parking spot during the day. If they can't find a parking spot during the day, is it because of the residents or because we're very busy? And if we've got a lot of business going on, then maybe that's a future plan of how do we interact with the street, design the street, parking signs. But I would prefer to see one major push to say no parking on town streets, any town streets, not just Main Street, any town street between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m.
That's an ordinance change, yeah.
Say?
That's an ordinance change, yeah.
I know. That's, then you have a clear way of saying to people, you gotta find a parking space overnight. You gotta find something overnight. And if you're not, no matter whether it's a snowstorm or not, because right now we're only monitoring with snowstorms. And even then, I mean, I don't know how many tickets we give out for parking on the streets overnight with a snowstorm. But if we made it a policy, an ordinance of some sort to say, you can't park in town streets. It's just overnight, find some place to go. I'm not in favor of taking down the 2-hour sign, the 2-hour parking signs. And apparently from what you and Chris brought, the state would change the signs, but they would take down those signs.
Well, that was the proposal. That was the intention on our part.
Now, if we could put up a sign in addition to that sign that says no parking town street from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., well, then we have 2 signs on that particular post. That's okay.
That's lovely.
And then we don't need,
That's
well,
lovely.
huh?
Lovely, 2 signs on 1 post.
Yeah, well,
Efficient.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Do all the yield signs that we have and everything, too. Yeah.
But I think the other piece of this that needs to be considered, because whatever decision you make, whether you keep the signs or not, I think a renewed message to our police department too about what is the expectation. It's been a long time, as per the data. Just looking at data alone, not speaking to any particular officers, not speaking to what conversations I've had or you've had with members of the police department or the chief of police. It's been a long time since we have had routine enforcement on this item. I think whatever the decision is from the Board of Selectmen, the message is going to be, this is the direction. So if it's to keep the signs, I just want to make sure that the Board of Selectmen has an understanding of what that means. That means that the regulations stay. That means that maybe we even need, instead of 2 signs, we get 1 singular sign that indicates both items. 2-hour parking, no parking between the hours of whatever. So that way, it's a new, fresh sign. It's something that DOT will install for us. It's something that's a little bit more eye-catching and a little bit more refreshed so that people take notice. And it's something that we tell our police officers, you gotta drill down on this because it matters.
And if we're making a change in that sign, then we may want to go on Main Street 3 hours. 3-hour parking rather than 2-hour parking, giving people a chance to participate in a longer dinner without worrying about 2 hours, or a movie, that's 3-hour movie. So if we're gonna change the sign, let's look for a more appropriate use of what we're putting on the sign.
I say that we think about this some more, get a few more comments, and look at it and move along.
It was interesting that the comments came from, of course, the store owners or the owners. Do we get any comments? Or no, we've had no comments from any residents in town, have we?
We had a survey done. Well, there was a survey that was conducted.
You mentioned that.
That's true. It wasn't related to this particular subject, but yes, there is a
They
survey
would've
that was
mentioned
done.
something.
But we did not have any comments in response to this specific letter that were from residents who live on Main
Because it
Street.
didn't go to residents, it went
That
to
is
store owners.
correct.
It
The
went to
request
owners.
was to go to owners and to go to, and I think that there are similar concerns actually between, to the point of what side of the street somebody's parking on. There are some store owners who are working with customers who are perhaps older, who are perhaps limited in mobility, or who perhaps are just scared to cross Main Street, because I know I am every morning. And I think that there is a concern from some of those individuals to having, limitations on where and how they can park, whether it's on Main Street or whether it's even on some of the side streets. Elm Street was one that was brought up in particular today. Received a comment from the owner of the hair salon that's over on Elm Street, and some of the patrons that individual has would be concerned about having to cross Main Street. And if they, depending on what those regulations look like, they may be pushed to the other side. They may not be able to stay as long as they'd like, things of that nature, and it makes it more difficult.
The hair salon on Elm Street you're talking
Yes.
about?
Yep.
Well,
Is she worried about parking on Main Street?
And Elm Street. But to Jack's point about having a parking restriction on Elm Street as well as Main Street.
Well,
As
I
a
mean,
town road.
but the interesting thing is that there are no time limits right now. And, so
Effectively.
effective, we don't have a time limit now, so nobody has a time limit. And I think one of the ways to address some of these other issues is strictly a remarking of Main Street, I think. And, we've talked about handicap spots. Maybe every block has to have a handicap spot. I know that there's one in, in the New Jane, Winston News, that there's one handicap spot. Maybe there needs
It's
to.
in front of Friends of Main Street and Rooter Market only.
Yeah, so maybe there needs to be like a handicap spot on each side in each block that makes sense, for things, or maybe a drop-off spot. Because the YMCA certainly has made their own drop-off spot. Independent of the town, they just have signs out there on cones, 15-minute drop-off, because they're trying to make it so that people can get in there, so.
And a lot of the businesses do not have a rear exit
Yeah.
at all.
What about landlords? They own the buildings, they have tenants. Do they offer parking when they sign a lease?
No, in many cases, no.
It's like mill
They don't
buildings.
they don't offer parking, so I mean, are they not responsible at all? Or did you get any feedback from any of the landlords?
So there's very light commentary that was provided in what was given to you tonight about concern for resident parking. Relatively speaking, little concern expressed. I mean, most of these buildings, long before zoning came into play, didn't have parking spaces long before zoning came into play. So any regulations that may have been imposed on them, they're grandfathered in. So even if there is a regulation on the books that requires a level of parking, a number of spots to be allocated per unit, it's not applicable to
Yeah.
these facilities. Unfortunately.
Well, as Joe's letter said, we've been talking about this
Yeah,
50 years. I remember back in the 70s doing some stories on the parking. There was a parking authority. I don't know, was anybody in town remember the parking authority?
There was a parking authority, and there was also I guess you'd call it a meter maid.
Oh,
And it was marked off and people got tickets. And then there was a whole big argument over
Yep.
how much money did it take in, how much is it costing us to have it? And then we had major budget woes and the position had gone away.
Yep.
And there was once a proposal, short-lived, but to cap the river from I think Union Street down to Case Avenue Bridge and make it parking. That didn't last too long.
So we'll move on. Now's a chance for more residents and business owners to send in their input on parking on Main Street particularly, but also the other streets as well.
And this came because somebody came to us and talked to us about this parking
Yep.
issue.
Last March.
Somebody came and they were very specific that we needed to do something.
So your questions and concerns can be sent to the town manager at townofwinchester.com. Moving on to item 12, executive session to include the town manager to discuss the sale of town-owned land, to discuss contract negotiations, and to discuss the town manager's search. Can I have a motion to go into executive session at 8:40?
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Jonathan. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Jim.
We're leaving, right?
Yeah, to the blue room.
Yep, I'll be over in just a second.
Never mind.
I know what it is.
Is it the little flap in the
But-
front?
Unopposed. That's the most interesting thing I find. Somebody sent it, so I had to find it. I don't know what.
Okay.
I
Oh,
get
wait a
them.
minute, there's, here, look,
What do you got?
here's
Oh,
Bill, in order to, you have to be off it, and then it comes up.
Yeah, we should be.
Yeah, kind of.
Whatever you like.
Should pop out.
Pretty much. I guess not 10 to 11 on Thursday.
oh my gosh.
Oh, it's only 4 o'clock.
All right, we're still 5.
It's only 4 o'clock, come on.
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock?
We are back from executive session at 9:58 PM. Can I have a motion from executive?
Want me to make it? I'd like to make a motion that we engage the services of Municipal Resource, Inc. out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to conduct a comprehensive executive recruitment for the town manager of the town of Winchester.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to, just in case, you know, people are watching, or in case I know the reporters are gonna pick this up. The town manager position, as you know, we've been talking about it for the past few weeks. We've had some presentations by a couple of the search firms. We were impressed by all of them. We also know that we need to find a high-quality candidate, because we've had high-quality managers. So what we're gonna do as a board is make sure that we have this help in order to find us the best candidates around. It's also an unusual time because it is an election year, and over the next 6 weeks, the firm will be able to work and getting input from staff, the board, et cetera, to be able to form that, and then the next board will be hiring the town manager candidate.
Other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous? We have no citizens' comments, selectmen's comments and reports. Anyone?
Just a reminder that we have, on the 23rd of September, we have the Fall River cleanup. Anyone who has children 18 years of age or younger needs to sign a waiver. It's on our website. And those leading it. And on September 30th, the Fall Foliage Festival is going to be held with a car and motorcycle show from 10 to 3. Rain date is October 1st.
Anything else? Steve?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous? On the nose? On the nose. Need anything from us? Option that we are going with.
Hey, Glenn? Glenn, when you put the wall of fame up there in your office, and you did it the night of the Citizens Academy, unveiled it, I would love to have attended, but I didn't know about it.
Okay.
So if you have more people that you're gonna have, you know, a little ceremony or anything for, could you invite the board?
Well, and I'll take some responsibility for that, because I have really encouraged all the department directors to think outside the box and how to make the,
No, it's great.
Make it unique.
I think it's great, but I don't want anybody to think that I didn't support it and I wasn't there to help or, you know, encourage it.
oh, and
I mean, that's what happens, is sometimes we don't show up and people think we don't care. That's why I'm bringing it up, is because I don't want anybody to think I didn't care about it.
I can own some of that too, because I didn't know about it ahead of time.
Well, I just,
Is there a number? So there is, but we're not gonna put it out.